Hello, everyone, and welcome to this panel framer on how governments can enable foreign direct investment globally. I am Jacopo De Toni, the editor of FDI Intelligence with the Financial Times in London, and I'm joined from Riyadh by His Excellencies Khalid Al Falih, the Minister of Investment of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. Your Excellencies, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Yaqub. I'm pleased to be with your audience and looking forward to a great conversation.
Your Excellencies, we have 15 minutes, so let me just cut to the chase. Foreign global investment has been plummeting since the outbreak of the COVID-19 pandemic. According to our data, it's down by 40% so far this year. It is not expected to recover until mid-2021. In such a challenging market environment, what is that governments can do to enable foreign investment globally?
Well, first of all, what's happening in 2020 is, in addition to the impact of the pandemic, which you mentioned, Yaqub, it's also the culmination of trends that have been taking place over a number of years as the mega trends of globalization, urbanization, population growth, many countries in the developing world coming out of poverty and great increases in consumption have led and fed waves after waves of investing, both by domestic and foreign players around the world. This has resulted, as we have seen in the last decade, in overcapacity in many sectors. It has also exposed fragilities in certain supply chains, in the financial sector, of course, most visibly in the 2007, 8, 9 financial crisis. So adjustments were already underway. We've seen geopolitical tension, we've seen trade wars, we've seen technology competition between East and West that was already stressing the investment environment, increasing risk, leading to new trends in investing, moving from scale to quality, adjusting to consumer expectations, to societal expectations when it comes to the environment, sustainability, moving more towards services and experiences, and less about massive consumption of goods and commodities. Having said that, I don't want to underestimate the impact of the pandemic. And all the point I'm making is the pandemic and the economic slowdown, unprecedented in my lifetime, and I'm not very young, that we're seeing today is just coming on top of layers of significant changes that those of us who are in the investing field have already been adjusting to. So I think, to answer your question, governments have to be aware of these major trends, from globalization to regionalization, addressing consumer and societal expectations that are changing, addressing the fact that in many economies, including us in Saudi Arabia, the domestic private sector is quite advanced and quite sophisticated. And running after FDI, just for the sake of numbers and for the sake of FDI, is not at all warranted. You want to bring FDI when it can add value and when you can also give the environment a platform for your foreign investors to be competitive, profitable, and address new markets and new needs. At the heart of this is looking at matching capabilities of the investors with the needs of your market that you're trying to address, both home markets as well as export markets, making sure that you are competitive in a sustainable way. There is no sense in artificially making an investment profitable through misguided incentives that ultimately become unsustainable and stressful on the government and the country awarding those incentives. And also, as I
So,
mentioned,
Minister,
matching domestic and international investment needs. And at the heart of this, of course, is managing risk. I think many investors have seen over time that too much risk would materialize. Transparency, predictability of regulations, and having honest conversation about what is the expected role of the investor and the private sector, and what is the role of the government as a regulator and as a safekeeper of the ecosystem in which the investment is taking place, and then staying true to those promises from both sides and keeping basically the environment healthy for the investment to grow and prosper, and profits to accrue to the investors, and when they exit, they should be allowed and indeed encouraged to exit and enter new investment opportunities.
So, Minister, when it comes to Saudi Arabia and your own policy making, how have you been adjusting your investment promotion strategy to these new and ever-evolving and very challenging market circumstances?
Well, as I mentioned, we were already in the midst of an adjustment. Vision 2030, inspired by His Royal Highness Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, already anticipated these global mega shifts that are taking place and was already driving the country in a coordinated way towards building new sectors that are more focused on qualitative competitive advantages of the kingdom rather than the traditional resources, whether it's hydrocarbons or minerals that we enjoy and we will continue to build on. So we were already in the midst of building sectors around technology, sectors around tourism, sectors around global environmental sustainability and the energy transition that is taking place, sectors that are anchored around knowledge, research, innovation, and by empowering our most important resource, which is ever renewable, our youth, and of course both genders, men and women within the Saudi economy, who are indeed in the driver's seat today of Vision 2030. And you've seen this by launching some of the world's largest projects ever, projects such as NEOM, Qiddiya, Red Sea, Daraya, and many, many others, as well as the transition, as I mentioned, that we are seeing in our energy mix, and building on the material advantage that we've enjoyed and moving into conversion industry. Another aspect that we have launched is our focus on logistics, air logistics, sea logistics, land logistics, materializing the vision of having the kingdom being a hub for reaching and connecting 3 continents and connecting international and global supply chains through the kingdom and addressing markets that are huge and emerging, in particular Africa and the Middle East.
Okay, Minister, obviously the pandemic is giving foreign investors and private investors in general good reasons to hold off their investment plans. The same IMF is forecasting a subdued economic output and economic output below potential for until 2023 at least. So is there any specific incentive? Is there any specific policy that you have been designed in the past couple of months to support and shore up for investment into your country? And is there anything that other global policymakers globally can draw from your own experience with this regard?
Well, I think the biggest incentive that a country should have is ensuring its resilience to absorb shocks. I would like to tell you that this is the biggest and the last shock we're going to see, but of course, we don't know that. 10 years ago, everybody was thinking that the great financial crisis was the crisis that will end all crises and that we will build resilience in the financial sector, and we will withstand future smaller recessions, but nothing massive is going to happen, and we're living now through something bigger and more difficult than what we saw a decade ago. So I think it's important for all countries, and that's a partnership between the private sector and the public sector, to build resilience to withstand unexpected shocks, black swans, if you will, that are inevitable to come. Saudi Arabia has proven that we have one of the most resilient economies. We had the confluence of an economic crisis, a demand crisis, a health crisis, a human psychology crisis with the onset of fear that we saw in the beginning of the pandemic, in the second quarter in particular. And of course, it was compounded by the oil market crisis, given the importance of oil to our economy. Yet, our financial sector is stronger than ever. Our credit rating is maintained. Our economy, yes, it's shrinking a little bit. Yes, unemployment, like everywhere else, has increased the last few months, but we're on our way to recovery. We have opened up, and we have proven to our private sector that we look after them and our people first. We have supported the private sector and has proven to them that the government and that the country is going to look after them. So that sense of security and safety is important for the governments to ensure, because we're inevitably going to. The other thing, as I mentioned to your earlier question, is making sure that regulations are predictable, transparent, fair, and that an honest conversation is taking place with the private sector. Today, as we speak, we have 27 reformed regulations being addressed by the government and are being discussed with the private sector in our public consultation methodology. In addition to reforming regulations and addressing the ease of doing business and the risks that I mentioned and the cost of doing business in the kingdom, we're in the design stage of what we would hope to launch in the next few months, a series of special economic zones. These special economic zones will be focused on specific sectors. They will be addressing both in-kingdom demands, but particularly export markets and things like logistics and things like manufacturing, advanced manufacturing, biotechnology, chemical industry, maritime industry, as we are launching one of the world's largest maritime complexes on the eastern province. And there will be some unique special economic zones for the financial sector, for tourism and hospitality. So I think there will be many specific incentives designed for specific investors and focused zones that will be launched in the kingdom in the months to come.
Okay, Minister, we have time for a very final question. You have had a very long career in Saudi Aramco first. You served also as a CEO between 2009 and 2015. Then you served as an energy minister. You mentioned the oil industry. The outlook on the oil industry is pretty grim at the moment. What is your assessment on the current situation in the oil market, and how is this going to affect also your investment promotion strategy moving forward?
Well, I think, first of all, the oil industry has always experienced cycles. But indeed, this year was the severest, sharp demand drop that we've ever seen. And unfortunately, it came on the back also of increased capacity built by the US with the shale, by countries in the region like Iraq, and by decreased consumption also, as many countries are going through energy efficiency and their energy transition. So that confluence with the stopping of air freight, land transport, and so on and so forth, and manufacturing for a few months, resulted in that massive collapse of the marketplace. I have to give credit to the kingdom, and of course I am biased, but I think Everybody has been witness to the leadership of the kingdom led by His Royal Highness, the Crown Prince, and ably managed by His Royal Highness, Prince Abdulaziz bin Salman, the Energy Minister. Together, we brought the rest of the world around us and the first Energy Minister for the G20, and managed to come to a supplier-producer consensus that the market needs to be managed for now, and production needs to be managed. And we've seen quite a turnaround from the minus $40 a barrel that was seen in the U.S. Gulf Coast momentarily to prices having been steady over the last few months in the neighborhood of $40. Obviously, $40 is not a healthy price for sustained production. My outlook for oil is that oil will continue to be the backbone of the energy mix for decades to come. I know there is urgency amongst many in the environmental arena to switch to non-fossil fuels, but I think that's not realistic. I think if we were to attempt to do that, we would be slowing the global economy significantly and adding another risk factor to the ones we're already experiencing. So what we need is a managed transition. The kingdom is an active player, and I mentioned that we're already active in energy efficiency, switching to gas within our domestic, and also introducing hydrogen, renewables, green ammonia, and blue ammonia, and the kingdom is a leader in those fields.
That's fantastic. Well, Your Excellencies, thank you very much for being with us today. Minister Khalid Al Falih, the Minister of Investment of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. Thanks again. I would like to remind you also that these sessions will be available on demand for 2 months at globalsummitseries.live.ft.com. We're now returning back to you, Etna, for her take on the discussion. Thanks.
Thank you, Yaqub.
And thank you so much, Jacobo, and indeed to the Minister for Industry there from Saudi Arabia, His Excellency Khalid Al Falih. And of course, he was the former oil minister and all of his time at Saudi Aramco. And Jacobo got that question in there about what was happening in the oil market and in the energy market in Saudi Arabia. And not surprised, of course, he paid great tribute to all of his colleagues there and to the current oil minister, Prince Abdulaziz, for really working together with OPEC and making that wider OPEC plus group and, you know, putting together that balancing factor there in terms of what's been going on in the oil market after we looked at what he called there the confluence of so many events that brought about that drop in demand and really the collapse in the market back in April. So, of course, he would have something to talk about on that. And again, you know, bringing us really up to date too, because what's happening in the energy sector and the oil sector will, of course, influence his portfolio now as he really expands industry in Saudi Arabia. And again, the diversification that has been put in place, it's been put in place many years ago when they looked at 2020. And again, looking at, you know, manufacturing, looking at chemicals, all of that, some tremendous investment there. The focus on that panel, of course, was about foreign direct investment. And he really talked there about making sure that Saudi Arabia was a place where ease of doing business is in place. He said 27 regulations were going on at the moment in terms of being revived and renewed. They're constantly looking at what they need to do to be more transparent, to make sure that there are regulations in place that will benefit the public and the private sector. But he also talked very much about, you know, not just chasing the foreign direct investment dollar just for the sake of it, to make sure that it's very, very strategic in terms of what is needed, make sure that it's a win-win situation for everybody and that the return on investment will be there for the foreign direct investors, but also that the return will be there for the community and, you know, for the wider population. And I love the way he also talked about it as what he said, ever renewable resource that they had in Saudi Arabia. And that, of course, being the people that are in place. So big focus there. And as he said, lots of new projects that are in place, they're in progress, but of course, things very slowed at the moment, but there's no doubt that the will there, and I think the planning that's going ahead for the future, because they're really looking at this And despite all that has happened, as he said, even though the world recovered 2008, 2009 and thought they were ready for whatever other little hiccup might happen. And indeed, COVID-19, the black swan that nobody had expected, really setting the global economy back. But again, Saudi Arabia really looking towards 2030 and looking with clearer focus. So they're going to stay focused, and he's going to make sure that his role with the Ministry of Industry is certainly part and parcel of that as they go forward. We're now going to look at innovation to shape new frontiers. And we have a wonderful panel set up in place. Kimberly Long, the Asia editor of The Banker, the Financial Times, of course, magazine, they're going to be really looking at what's going on. And she has the chief executive with Ahold. Accenture is also joining us, Marathons from Rwanda, and the Economic Commission for Africa. So a very diverse panel there, and we're really going to be looking forward to see what's coming up. So in just a few minutes, innovation to shape new frontiers. Stay with us.